Hello right bags, it's Jade. Welcome to a Genesis DLC review. Why am I doing a review after like 5 weeks? Well, I just kind of want to give you my thoughts and opinions about the game and everything that went on with it and how it affected the whole of ARK Survival Evolved. Mainly, hopefully as a warning for next time, some constructive feedback, and to show you guys that I really did enjoy some parts of the DLC. So we're going to be talking at first about the biomes, about the creatures, the unique ones that you can tame, and that's really what Genesis holds a lot of. It's about that kind of, main thing. We're also going to be talking about the missions and the end game and where it kind of fits in with the rest of ARK or as a game as a whole. Then we'll probably talk about the outcomes and what's gone on with ARK Survival Evolved, why so many people are grumpy and why they need to improve, and just don't let this happen again with all the issues that really affected console players the most. So let's go through the good stuff first of all. Kicking off with the bog biome and the bog spider, and we're pretty much breaking it down like this. It's amazing. I honestly didn't like the look of this creature when I first saw it. I'm not a big fan of bugs, and I just thought, oh no, it looks like a bit of a cross between a Reaper and just something I don't really want to mess around with. It is hands down one of the most exciting, best thought out creatures I've seen in ARK Survival Evolved in a long time. Better than any in Extinction, better than any than in Aberration. I really like it. I love the way it moves across. You do not need a flyer when you've got a bog spider. I'm going to carry on calling it a bog spider. I know it's a bloodstalker, but that's what I'm calling it, so deal with it. Moving around like your Spider-Man is just simply fantastic. It's great. And once they finally added the ability on console that you could glide, was even better. That was something that console was missing for nearly 3 weeks. It's a bit crazy that, but that's what the truth happened. You couldn't do it unless you got the update on the console versions a little while after release. Either way though, it makes a compelling creature. It is just one of the best. I know people like their flyers, but with one of these guys, you can understand why you don't need a flyer. You just don't need a flyer for any of the maps when you've got one of these guys. Maybe you like one because it looks good or you like that certain creature, but in terms of practical use, you do not need a flyer when you've got one of these guys. The way it glides, the way it moves from tree to tree, its abilities to get around is just amazing. The way that you have to tame it as well is great, reminiscent obviously of the Reaper and letting it kind of grab hold of you. And again, that's something new. I like it when Wildcard do these sort of new mechanics. Not just relying on the good old knock it out and feed it with berries or meat. So absolutely, Genesis nails that with all the creatures that you have to pretty much do something along them lines to tame the creatures. So fair play. It moves great. I loved it. Best creature out of the DLC and one of the best creatures I played with out of any of the DLCs. The bog biome itself was okay. It looks pretty at certain points. The nighttime, that feeling that you really are in a claustrophobic spot with all the fog going around. Yeah, it's great. It does look great. But I was never a big fan of Aberration. I don't like not being able to see clear sky or sort of different weather effects come and go. It just makes me feel claustrophobic. But I can appreciate it's a good map. I would say it doesn't have enough uniqueness about it though. Eventually you go and take a look at the little waterfalls that have some of the mission points around it, and they're pretty cool. The little points where it's the ruins, but the rest of the map, you could be anywhere and you wouldn't really know where to go, north, south, east or west, because it all looks very much the same. There's no real decent landmarks that stand out. Maybe that's the point, is to make you feel lost in this biome, but I kind of felt it was just a little bit too repetitive. The idea as well that it's meant to be a starter biome is ridiculous. We all know how hard it is. It's a meme now that the bugs pretty much destroyed people's fun from this game from the first few days. People comparing it to the early days of ARK, how it was so hard. And considering it's meant to be the easy biome, it's definitely a misstep. It's a case of balancing that they just didn't get right. Adding creatures at spawn points like a Sarco or Capricus or the Spinos was just ridiculous. And the way that they didn't test the bug swarms was a bit crazy as well. But I'm going to talk about that in a little while. So overall, nice little biome, not one of my favourites, but the creature itself, absolutely amazing. Supposedly the medium style biome that you survive in and you'll be okay at landing in, and to be honest, yeah, it's okay again. The Arctic biome is pretty much copy and paste from so many of the other biomes. One thing I do like though about this map and the rest of them is that when you harvest items from the bushes or the berries that you can see, the flowers, it does give you obviously the same stuff you're used to like Mijo and stuff, but it does look different and I like that aspect. Another really good plus point, even if it doesn't give you some new berries, some new items to actually cook or use, the looks of it is still fresh and it freshens up the game just by doing a tiny little kind of trick really. When it comes to the actual biome itself though, like I said, it is a bit too copy and paste. It just feels like every other snow biome we've had, except for the really horrifying, boring, horrible snowstorm that covers up like 25-35% of the map. It's really obnoxious how they implemented that. I can understand why. They want these little creatures, the feroxes, to be safe and be hard to get, and what better way than to put a blanket of snow where you can't see more than like 10 foot in front of you. I get it, it's meant to be a challenge, but it was just a little bit OP. It just didn't really lend itself to my playstyle. I didn't really like the idea that I can't really do anything about it. I couldn't wear like goggles to get me through. There was nothing that was going to help me go through the gloom unless you had a Bloodstalker, which obviously does show up some creatures, and it kind of diminished the rest of the playing space as well. Having that part of that area locked off by snowstorms meant the rest of it was quite constricted. Then when you add in the fact you can't build in certain zones, that made it even more constrictive. And as I said, it's pretty, definitely. It's definitely more detailed than any of the other snow biomes, but it still felt just a little bit too copy, cut and paste from other ones we've seen either on the island or even Ragnarok, some of them other biomes that we've seen the snow kind of in. When it comes to its main creature, obviously the Ferox, it is fantastic. It's like a souped up rock golem that can actually glide and move, and the way it jumps through, you feel like you are the Hulk. Smash! And pretty much I think that's what it's modelled on, with its abilities to literally just pound the ground, pick up huge boulders and chuck it at enemies, and the way that it can clamber around, it's amazing. I like the taming method as well. I like the fact that you've got to find these small little creatures and pretty much hope you've got enough element to make sure they don't take you on, and I love the idea that eventually if it runs out it's going to go raging on you. Another good mechanic, a new way of playing the game, and 5 years nearly after Ark Survival Evolved pretty much came to be, it's good to see that we're getting fresh ways to play with creatures, new abilities for these creatures and new ways to tame them, and Wildcard are pretty good at that. I will give them their due. They are realising, or they realised a long time ago, they couldn't just keep adding dinosaurs and have the same taming methods or the same style abilities. So I'm really hopeful for the future when we get a TLC, we're going to see lots of creatures have some similar abilities or borrowed abilities from some of the newer stuff we've seen, because the way they do it is pretty good. It's pretty top notch at keeping everything fresh. I guess an extra added thing to do with these maps I should give a bit of credit for is the rock slides and stuff. Yeah, they're annoying, it is. Or when like the lava goes off in the lava biome, or when the ocean biome's got its whirlpools. Yes, it can be a bit frustrating, but at least it adds a little bit more danger to the environments, and I like that as well. I think that's added ability to make the maps a little bit more difficult or a little bit more challenging and just a little bit more interesting. So yeah, it is annoying, but I can see why they're added, and I kind of agree. It's nice to have that ability. What's not so great is the lack of buildable spots on all the maps, particularly the ocean map, and I'm going to cover that in a minute, but it's here as well on the snow biome, some places where you just can't build and stuff, and it just overall makes Genesis feel like you're here to visit, not to stay. Sharoof, the Sharoof is on fire. Yeah, Magmasaur creature. Again, another unique creature. I love that it's got some new abilities. I love the look of it. It's one of the best. And actually the X variants, which I haven't really mentioned yet, are absolutely amazing in the volcano biome. It's truly fantastic getting hold of a T-Rex that looks the way it does. Easily the prettiest reskins they've done, you know, compared to stuff like the Corrupted and other creatures they've done in the past, or specific event colours they've had. This is definitely the way to go with more DLC or updates in future. Just give us more biome specific variants, because I would love to see more coloured designs and ways to make them more interesting, and it definitely works here with the volcano ones. The Magmasaur itself is pretty useless. Like, I'm not a big PvP player, I don't play PvP, but I know enough of PvP. I know enough players, YouTubers that play it, to know that Magmasaur could be potentially good as a counter to bullet sponges, where you've got hundreds of creatures outside your base, or potentially trying to take out lots of the turrets before it gets done itself. But I still haven't really seen too many people utilising it as that way. I think it moves way too slow still. It just hasn't got the abilities and agility to get around, and I just don't think it's going to be utilised enough in PvP. And in PvE, it's even worse. Like, you're never going to use this creature. You're never going to use this in a million years to go and do stuff in PvE. Like, compared to what you've already got, like a Wyvern or a Rock Drake, much more agile, much more mobile creatures that have the same sort of power variations. So an interesting creature. I love the idea it's a mobile forge, but again, why did you not make it an advanced forge? Why did you make it the most basic of forges? It pretty much does exactly what the same one does. They should have made it to the most advanced one, or give some extra bonuses, or you get extra ingots from it. I do obviously like the idea it turns metal into ingots, and that's what you have to fire before you can actually utilise some of its abilities. But overall, it's just a little bit undervalued, I think. I don't think the Magmasaur is going to be anyone's go-to meta in the future. The volcano itself has got some nice little touches, like the ash areas and the way that there's toxic fumes in some spots. And the caves themselves, literally, if you're down there too long, you're brown bread. You're going to be totally toast. Yeah, but the rest of it is, again, still a bit cookie cutter. It's still a bit just cut and paste. And I hate the way the world borders cut off points. Like, you literally can't get to the top of the mountain here or on the snow biome because it's just cut off by the world border, and it's just a bit rubbish. I know it's meant to be a simulation, I know Genesis is meant to be that way, but I just still felt like it would have been nice if you could have included the whole range without these sort of barriers just so close to it, make it a little bit bigger. And again, it's the same argument, not enough buildable spots, although I don't know if you really want to be building bases since it's so dangerous with the volcanic eruptions going pretty much left, right and centre. And then we've got the ocean biome, and pretty much one of the most underutilized areas. It looks pretty when you get under the water, when you start exploring some of the air bubbles that they've got and some of the little caves and trenches. Yep, they've borrowed the designer that done a lot of work for Atlas, particularly the Blackwood DLC, and is the creator of the ISO Crystal Isles mod that's going to be coming this summer, and they are the ones that did the majority of the work in the ocean biome. But it's just a bit redundant. Like, there's just not a lot going on. There's not interesting gameplay. Hopefully this puts to bed anyone complaining or saying they want to see a water-based DLC. It would be boring as heck. Like, no one wants that because there's not enough combat you can do unless you're on your creatures underwater. Even though Wildcard have tried in the past with the tech vacuum bases, no one really uses them either. So water combat and water-based gameplay, I just think is a bit of a pipe dream. I just still don't understand why people want it. Everything's a bit slow. It's a bit murky when you're under the water a lot of the time, so I can't see why so many people want to spend so much time in the water. But for sure, it's pretty enough. It just doesn't actually have a lot of functions. There's not a lot to do underneath the water. Like, you're gathering resources, yeah, you can go and explore a couple of these air pockets, but it's still just a little bit boring. There's just not enough mechanics in the game to keep you underwater for a long time. You know, you're not going to find a huge underwater city where you can literally just go walking around and explore. It's these little pockets that end up will just being rat runs on PvP if you can build in them, and for PvE you'll just go there to get resources. No one's going to be building their huge bases. The flip side of that, of course, is you're meant to have your base on these guys, the Mega Chelons, and what a great idea. I love the idea of this. You can go underwater with your big turtles with your base, but the limitations on it are pretty harsh. Only being able to have a base that's like 3 walls high and only so many squares across. Yes, it will do the job, give you a few spaces for storage chests, crafting areas, but it's not really going to be that sustaining. Like, there's not going to be too many Aaron Longstaff build videos showing you how to build stuff on these turtles because it will just become really repetitive really quickly. The turtle also is probably one of the worst creatures out of the DLC. It moves way too slow. You'd think in the water it'd be pretty quick, or at least a bit quicker, but no, it just isn't a particularly thought out creature, I don't think. It's got its abilities, yes, it's got the idea that it can push stuff away with its water jets and stuff, but I gotta say, it was not my favourite creature. Definitely the worst out of all of them. Mainly because you want to build bases and you want to be able to take your bases to and fro from places underwater, but there's nowhere really to go and do stuff. Like, you'll take your creature and you might want to go and load up on like some resources from the hidden or the air pockets, but it'd be quicker just to get your Megalodon and go down there and you'll be able to get exactly the same sort of stuff. So it's a shame. It was an experiment, I guess, to show people what it'd be like with water gameplay, and it's kind of the same problem Atlas, their sister game, has. There's not a lot to do under the water. It's just not their fault. It's just the way that the game is. Like, it's not a water-based game like Subnautica, and I don't think they can really make it into that sort of experience either. Now, it doesn't mean I want loads of land. Loads of people complaining they can't build or the areas around it are too small for land bases. And I kind of get the idea it wasn't meant to be that way. You're not meant to be exploring this biome too long unless you have built a little base on your Mega Chelon. You're not meant to be building these houses and places on top of it. And obviously the water platforms, that's probably one of the best things. Yes, for sure. I really hope they take what you can do on the water platform and add it to a tree platform. Please stop making us have to put foundation pieces on a tree platform in certain ways. Let things be snappable to it, just like it is on a water platform, because that is definitely some of the best stuff. Being able to build some cool little designs of bases on these little squares, one of the best features from it. It's definitely one of my favourite aspects of Genesis DLC. And finally, we're on to the Lunar Biome. Again, really pretty looking biome, and it's definitely got a lot more danger to it, and I like the idea that you're running out of oxygen and you get burnt in the sunlight. It makes it hard and it looks fantastic. It is definitely one of the prettiest biomes I've seen. It just is amazing the way all the asteroids are moving around, and you've got the big skybox pink and blue with all the hues of the galaxies and stuff. It looks great, and the idea to have all just bionic creatures up there is fantastic, alongside some of the other creatures like reapers and stuff. I didn't really explore too many of the caves because every time I went in there wasn't any creatures spawning, especially on console, but certainly I like the Lunar Biome look, and I like the idea it's a big challenge. Whether or not you're going to be up there too long doing stuff, I'm not sure, because the Astrocetuses are pretty useless. Like, they're just not that functional as something I think a lot of players are going to go for. Again, a bit of a useless creature. In PvP, is anyone really going to go to the lengths that they have to go and get one to use and base raiding? I've still yet to see too many people using it on official networks so far, maybe because it's quite hard to get them, I'm not sure, but it looks like they're too easy a target to get shot at by turrets and players to really be useful as what it's meant to be, which is like a base destroyer. You're meant to be able to bring this whale in and literally just wipe out someone's turret towers and stuff, but it's just going to be too long getting it there, and you'll get shot down or attacked way before that happens. The ability also of its teleport is disappointing. The way they dressed it up before it came out was you'd be able to teleport almost anywhere, and it'd be great if all of a sudden you got a warning signal that in 10 minutes it was going to be teleporting into your area on your server on the island. That's what I imagined anyway. Instead, we get this short little crappy little hop that, yes, can take creatures in it around it, but again, it's just pretty redundant. It looks great, it definitely looks amazing. The way it can go in the water as well is pretty fantastic, but as an actual PvP creature, I personally can't see how people are going to utilise it. And again, for PvE, it's pretty useless. Like, again, no one's going to be using this on a day-to-day basis. They'll do it just to say they've done it, but it won't necessarily be something you go back to time and time again to get one. Just briefly talking about the new items and the new stuff. The drill's okay, adds something new to the game, I guess. You've got the various rocket launchers and tech stuff, and it's all just a little bit too shiny. We would love a DLC, I would anyway, that had just primitive items. Please, just go back to Primitive Plus, ramp it up, make it that all technology's been erased when we return for Gen 2. Make it we all have to return to really archaic medieval items to use. Put the Castle Keeps and Mods Fault mod as part of that DLC. Do something different instead of just adding more technological bullshit onto the tech stuff. Overall, when you add up how many items, how many creatures there are, this is the worst offering for DLC compared to any of the others. With only really 5 brand new creatures, plus some X variants. When you add up the actual items like the tech claws and tech launcher, there's much more in either Genesis, the Extinction, or Scorched Earth, or Aberration, and it just feels like they kind of cut up some of the content that maybe should have been in this one, and they've delayed it and put it into Gen 2. I could be wrong, I could be, but definitely it doesn't feel like there's enough items in here, enough new pieces. Give us a new tile build set. Like I said, please give us Castle Keeps and Faults. Something different when it comes up to either the TLC launch or Genesis 2. Just give us something brand new to play around with, to build bases with, that isn't useless like a Megachelon or like the water bases where you can only place them in certain spots. And then finally, the big boss fight. I like the idea of trying something new, making it more like a proper raid rather than just another bullet sponge that you're just going to sit there with your T-Rexes munching on. The idea you've got to pick up the key codes and deliver them in time, and there's different waves, and there's different, like, it really does make it feel like they're trying to do a Destiny here with the raid bosses. So fair play to Wildcard for doing that. I thought it was good. I like the creatures that come spawning at you. The NPC enemies, the VR ones, clearly taken from some of the enemy types from Atlas. Yep, a nice little addition, and overall it is one of the freshest boss experiences that we've had in a while as well, and it wasn't just like, again, another big bullet sponge like Rockwell or some of the other creatures we've seen. So yeah, fair play, I like this. Maybe not as a Mighty Morphin Power Ranger big as the Extinction boss fights, but certainly it was something new and different, and it tried to be like them looter shooter game style raids, and I like that, I commend that. In terms of overall story and stuff, I've never been too down with the lore, to be honest. It's not the reason I play. I play to go on adventures and get killed multiple times by dinosaurs. I'm not a big tamer, I'm not a big breeder. I just like running around and having an adventure. So in terms of where it leaves us for the sequel or the part 2 Genesis, obviously we're going on Earth, something to do with Terran Foundation, spoilers. Well, I won't spoil it anymore. I'll let you guys get to that point. But yeah, I don't think it really progresses the lore massively. It kind of just ends up being where we thought we might be, where Rockwell is going to be probably making some sort of big final appearance once more. Touched on it a little bit, some minor things just before we close up. The mission zones where you can't build in certain spots, I get why, because it interferes with missions, but it just makes so much of your maps redundant. It just really doesn't help that well to people to want to spend time in Genesis. And the no flyers thing, all that should have been communicated before you launch, just to keep your players, you know, in touch with what was going on. So, in closure, overall, the Genesis DLC, when you look at it from just a gameplay point of view, what it adds a couple of decent new creatures like the bog spider and like the ferox. Unfortunately for me, the Megachelon and the Magmasaur and the Astrocetus are just a bit redundant. So 2 out of 5 creatures are pretty much worth it in my opinion. When you talk about the biomes and when you're going to be spending time building your bases, it's just not there because of the missions, because of the lack of space, or they're quite small. It doesn't really feel like a map you're going to be spending enough time on. It's not a Ragnarok. This won't be winning prizes as everyone's favourite map. And I guess it's because it's designed that way. They want you to go and complete these missions, get these creatures, and then go and piss off back to your favourite maps, which probably are Ragnarok. You know, that's the way they probably view it as well. They've seen some of the data from the other DLCs and realised that people just really love certain maps. So it doesn't matter what you do, they're going to still go back to the old ones once they've got their creatures. And that's what Genesis feels like. It feels like it's somewhere you visit briefly, and then you're going to quickly forget about. And I feel like that's already happening with the content, the views, the players. I watch a lot of YouTubers and I'm already seeing some of the content dry up. People just aren't playing that much of Genesis. They've done their creature showcases, they've got what they needed from the biomes and resource guides, but no one's really taking their time to explore every inch of the biomes or the maps, and no one's really setting themselves up as like somewhere they're going to play for the next 6 months or so. I think this is why they announced pretty quickly after Genesis released as well, and with not much thought, that the Crystal Isles would come as a free mod, because they realised that this won't sustain people, and that's a big issue. The missions were a big gamble. A lot of people didn't like it. That's why it got like 60% negative review score on Steam, and I think it's about that still just now. Some people really don't like the idea of trying to put more single player content into ARK or PvE content, but that is a lot of players. Like nearly the majority of players that play this game play either single player or they play PvE servers. Yes, PvP players, you may think the world revolves around you, but it doesn't. So their idea to tailor content to PvEers and single player players is definitely there. It's absolutely the reason they've added the missions, and it kind of works. It's something to do. It's nice to have an event with your peeps. If you're going to go and try one of the missions out together or the races, I like what they've done. I like the idea. It's just the execution. I don't like the way that there's always creatures on the missions when you try and complete them, and that can stop you from completing it, or you know, ruin an experience for you because you run into something just at the last stages. I know it's guess it's part of the challenge, but I would have preferred it if it almost teleported you in isolation, so you didn't have to worry about creatures and you could just concentrate on the missions. The difficulty of the missions is ridiculous, and Wildcard clearly did not test it. They did not put any thought into how you would complete some of these on the higher difficulties. You can, yes, do them all pretty much on Gamma, but anything on Beta and Alpha sometimes, particularly obviously Alpha, is just impossible. So much so they had to update a couple times to nerf and reduce some of the times, etc. But I still think it deserved more. And this is the big criticism that's coming from the DLC itself. When you're going to add a bunch of content like missions and you're going to tailor to a particular subset or a big subset of your player base, you've got to make sure that stuff's balanced and working. And a big complaint of the missions is the rewards for it are not thought out. They literally just imported some drops from the island and maybe a couple of the other loot crates that you get in caves. There was no thought really into what was dropping, or if there was thought, they definitely didn't think about it hard enough. They should have really tailored the content you get from missions to suit that biome. Instead of getting water saddles for water creatures in the volcano area, instead of getting the most basic of stuff or most useless of blueprints, they should have spent more time tailoring specific drops. this. It just is ridiculous, some of the stuff that you have been getting. And the idea that you only get like 3 given items whenever you complete a certain mission, and I've shown you guys the guide to these already, that you know you can get certain items in certain missions always. I like that idea. I think they should have gone with that more. It should be like give you a full suit of something like scuba gear when you complete the water missions. It should give you lots and lots of Scorched Earth DLC items when you complete a mission in the volcano area. Something that really suits the biome, different weapon sets, that kind of stuff. But it doesn't really feel like they thought too much about it. So when it comes to the missions, it's great that they tried something new. I love the idea of trying to tailor content to people more and think of PvEs and single players. Big letdown that it wasn't balanced enough, a big letdown that the creatures get in the way of the missions, and a big letdown that the loot just isn't tailored correctly enough. And you want to make that your priority. If you're launching something that players are going to be skeptical of because so many aren't used to this, it's got to work. And it just shows how Wildcard really don't actually respect players' time, and they certainly don't think about how it's going to pan out once everyone's got through the initial hype. And you sense it brewing, guys, it's coming. Honestly, I don't know how Wildcard can operate as a company when they're so tone deaf to people's crying out for more testing. We all know you love the hype, Wildcard. We all know it's what you thrive on. I've watched many of your keynote speeches at GDSC to know. I've seen the way that you've done things over the last 5 years covering the game. Hype is what generates you your numbers, your views, your money, the concurrent players on Steam. But eventually, you're going to piss off the player population so much they won't buy stuff from you in the future. Because you can't just keep hyping shit up and not actually launching it in the correct state. PC maybe wasn't as bad as it has been for Extinction, but Xbox and PlayStation was a fucking atrocious this time round. Not as bad maybe as Extinction once more, I don't know. The amount of stuff that got broken or got missing or that got replaced with the launch of this is just staggering, and I would be here all year listing all of them, but I'm going to list maybe a few key ones. You took away dedicated servers just because you launched DLC. That should never happen. Any other games company like Activision launching a Modern Warfare Remastered 2 campaign, oh, but we're going to break single player for the most recent Modern Warfare. People would be losing their shit, and that's effectively what you've done. You've broken the ability for people to host this game on their private little Xboxes or PS4s. Add to that Primitive Plus being broke for weeks when you launched it as well. Again, when you launch DLC, surely it's in your brains to realise you're going to break something else. Surely you should be focusing on making sure that every part of your game can pretty much work. I'm not expecting everything to be perfect. ARK is such a huge game with so many complicated systems on a very old engine build. But for fuck's sake, test some basic shit out, and if it doesn't work, delay it a little bit and just concentrate and fix that stuff out. Not having dedicated servers work properly, not even having non-dedicated. You couldn't even play this co-op with some of your friends on console for a couple of weeks until they pushed the update is unforgivable. Making things that should work is your #1 priority when you test your DLC. Single player server settings not saving ever on a PlayStation 4. They're still broke 5 weeks later. That is unforgivable. You shouldn't be wasting players' time. And that's what Wildcard do time and time again. They don't respect players. They don't respect people's time. They expect you to download a BUGGY DLC that you paid money for in a pre-order, and then it gets delayed 2-3 times. Then when you do download a huge hefty upload, you find that you're going to have to do another 30 GB update a week later, and the updates will just keep coming because they don't test anything. Wildcards need to employ a separate testing company. It's ridiculous that a game with 16 million players doesn't have an actual physical proper company that does this. It's literally them. It's literally the developers, the community team, and maybe a small group of players that will actually test it. They have no quality assurance whatsoever. The port teams themselves are all done by in-house little studios they've worked with for a number of years. They got rid of Abstraction that did the PS4 port job, and it shows. It really shows in the lack of quality in the ports, in the way that it takes you far too long to get these fixes out. You can blame all you want certain things like certification on PlayStation or Microsoft, but it's bollocks because it's always been the same. They haven't changed their certification process. You are just taking longer to get these bugs done because you are hiring people that haven't got as much experience porting it, or they're just simply not as good. When console players make up more than half of your fucking player populace, you should treat them with the respect they deserve. It maybe is a case of you trying this thing where I've complained in the past and said we should all get the same content at the same time. But I didn't expect that meant we'd get broken content and that was weeks behind PC. I assumed that you would get the game ready for PC, ready for Xbox and PlayStation 4, and then if there was anything else that needed to be done, you'd hold back on everyone getting it until it was ready. Instead, they release it for PC in a better state and then make everyone on Xbox and PlayStation wait 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 4 or 5 weeks for a proper fix. Add to that the shit communication that comes from their mouths, where they couldn't even update the patch notes 2 weeks later to actually accurately reflect what was in the game, what wasn't, where they're literally talking on social media posts that they don't know about what they're doing with the patch notes, that they're going to get to them soon, it's been too busy. Fuck you guys. You've got teams that develop your game, you've got teams that social manage your game. Make sure the developers are giving the communication to the people paid to actually get your voice out there to the populace. Since then, they're talking about they've got a live ops role now, and you might have seen Dolly as part of that, and Jat's the product manager, and they're all part of this focus to make it more live ops based, and that might be true. We could potentially not see ARK 2 on the next generation. We could just see them building more and more DLCs around ARK 1. I really fucking hope not. The game is old. It's not all your fault. The game is 5 years old. It's relying on systems that you've just chucked in over time. Cheapest cost, quickest way to do it, but it shows. I would suggest you don't add any more DLC. Please stop making stuff for this game. Give it a rest for a year and come back with ARK 2 and a brand new engine, and hopefully you've learned how to communicate with your team by then, hopefully you've learned how to communicate with players, and hopefully you've learned how to respect your player base. It is not just good enough to be so cocky because you've hit 153,000 concurrent players on Steam to think that's okay, that you can expect people to wait 4 or 5 weeks for simple bug fixes, that you can charge money for DLC that launches not just in a little bit of a buggy state, but fundamentally stops you playing the game in a variety of different ways, like co-op, like on your dedicated servers, or another game mode like Primitive. I've not even spoken about all the other stuff that's wrong with it, like some people haven't got any creatures running around their map, it's completely broke, how some of the people can't have any of their skins, any bionic dinos have all gone and disappeared some reason. People's characters being lost once more because you've got such a shit system of transferring players from server to server. It is just quite frankly too long, and I don't want to be here making this kind of video, but it's just got to stop, Wildcard. Just fix your game. It's an old meme, but it's so true. Why can't you just make sure it's tested properly? Release it onto betas months before its release. Let people try it out. We don't care about the fucking hype. We just want the game to work properly when we pay for something and when we go to download it. We don't want to have to be downloading huge massive updates for weeks on end because you lot were too fucking tight to actually employ some proper companies to test your shit. I say this laughing because nothing will change. Genesis 2 is going to get overhyped. They'll release some bullshit teaser trailer, keep people guessing with some bullshit puzzle, and then spend months going silent because they've actually had to take more time to complete it. Then they'll announce the delays, that the next part won't be coming out until next year, and then when it launches it will be still broken and buggy, and consoles will be forgotten about in terms of updates for weeks on end. That is the way Wildcard operate. It's a shitty ride, but it's still one of the most compelling. The gameplay itself, the ideas of ARK, no one else is doing it, and it's pretty much the only reason you're still popular, because no one else has managed to combine this amount of sandbox options with a survival game with so much stuff to do like taming and fighting, and it's just such a shame you just don't actually polish this wonderful little diamond a little bit more so it'd shine even better. It's the same relationship I've had with Ark Survival Evolved for 5 years. I love what they do. I love some of the ideas. I love the creatures. I love the world. I love it when the gameplay works. When it doesn't work, when they launch it where you can't even teleport to the biomes without crashing and losing all your progress, where so many bugs and issues are present, where they can't communicate for weeks on end about exactly what is being fixed, and just all the other bullshit that comes with supporting this game, it just sours the whole experience to me. It's just my opinion. You can disagree, you can agree. Let me know in the comment section down below. What do you think Genesis 2 is going to be like? Until next time, Ratbags, I'll see you later.